All right, today we're going to jump into a BDS analytics report from last year, talking about what companies should do in 2020 to create a business product. What products should they create? So we're going to kind of dive into this report, take a look and see if it's still relevant post-pandemic. And if not, we're going to let you know. So it should be an all-inclusive report. You got to stay through to the end. Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, capital markets analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast. To help me dive into this BDS analytics report is Tom Howard. He's a lawyer in Illinois and also host of Cannabis Legalization News. Tom, thanks for being back on the podcast.
Thanks for having me back, Josh. Happy 2021.
Yes, Happy New Year. Starting off with a bang, right?
Or a coup.
Yeah, right. All right, good stuff. So what should a cannabis business create? So again, if you're out there and you're deciding on whether you're going to have gummies or infused coffee, well, spoiler alert, don't do coffee. So where to start? Obviously, cannabis is the fastest growing consumer product industry in North America. So at the end of 2019, there was going to be $11 billion, $23 billion by 2020. I think we came pretty damn close to that. So first steps, according to this report, when choosing manufactured product is choosing the right one. So by the end of this, you're going to understand key risks and opportunities that are going to be in all areas of branded cannabis. You're going to become familiar with the range of products on the market today, and you're going to learn about select areas of branded cannabis that are expanding, as well as encountering data that highlights important trends, like concentrates. So obviously a big seller right here. Concentrates the fastest growing and biggest cannabis category, far surpassing flower, edibles, and topicals in terms of sales expansion. Last year in California, Oregon, Colorado, and Arizona alone, consumers spent $1.3 billion on concentrates. And with $1.3 billion in sales in the States through the first 3 quarters of 2018 of last year, could easily reach $2 billion. So definitely one of those things like live rosin, all those things picking up.
They are. It'd be interesting to see how because like rosins and concentrates aren't the most sociable of the smokes. You know, they aren't like the pre-rolls that you can pass around. And so it'd be interesting to see the data on that. I think that's going to continue, but I really like when they always describe something as the fastest growing. It essentially means its market segment is nothing, because if you go from 1 to 2, you've doubled, you know?
Yeah, that's like Bitcoin and Tesla and some of these other stocks that have gone parabolic. Absolutely. So some of the consumers that are into concentrates, average age 36, 37% have a degree, a college degree, 67% are employed, and a little over half are full-time. And reason for consumption of concentrates are 78% for social reasons, a little over half for medical, and just under half for quality of life. So with immense growth in product variety, concentrates are potentially strong candidates for new product launches. You just need to identify the market. So if you're envisioning a boutique market full of knowledgeable cannabis consumers, wanting to go crazy for your high quality shatter or live resin, or instead you want to manufacture large volumes of oil that are mostly destined for vape pens manufactured by other brands, you're looking at about $200,000 for the boutique side, and some risks behind that being like, if your product isn't superb, then those connoisseurs aren't going to come and get your product, right?
Right. Yeah, but then, you know, it does get back to how much of the market segment is these. And I can't believe that 36 was the average age, because when I think of people that are doing dabs, I think it's trending younger, like, you know, people that are 30 and younger. But that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I'm not. So I thought the same thing. I thought easily it would be in the early 20s. That would be the average age, because I don't see a lot of older dabbers that are out there. But
yeah,
like
I've had a gram of the white, like just sitting, and I just like looked at him like, oh crap, I have a gram of the white. I'm not really up for dabbing right now. And then I don't have the rig, but I do have a vaporizer that allows you to do it. It's an interesting market type, especially if you're the processor license. But and I'm glad that it's not going away, you know, because it's a different flavor profile and sensation than I would say like having a joint, you know.
Definitely, it's a lot more clear-headed, I think, doing a dab, and a live resin and rosin have kind of a more natural, like less, there's not the carbons in there. So if you have CO2 or butane or whatever is in there, people are worried about heavy metals. And I think there's a perception that it's healthier to do live resin and rosin, which is why sales are skyrocketing for those types of concentrates. But moving on to some other risks about if you're going to do bulk. If you're doing CO2 extracted oils, it's far more expensive than your competitors, then you're not going to go very far. So if you're going to go into it, emerge as one of the market leaders in commodity concentrates, then the payoffs are far in excess of what could be achieved by taking on a boutique route. What you have to do is nail the branding, marketing, and sales. And look at some partnerships, somebody with a team. And that's not cheap to get the right team.
Think about how long it takes for you to create that network of possible consumers, especially when you're just a brand coming onto the market. I mean, people have to taste your product and then they have to tell somebody about it. And then people have to like you on Instagram. And so you see some of these brands that are coming out and they might already have 40 to 60,000 people or more on Instagram. And I think that's really going to be what you're going to see a lot more, especially as branding starts to scale through the usage of like IP agreements from one state until the other, because you'll have a new extractor coming online in state X, doesn't really understand the product that much, doesn't really have a brand at all. This other extractor product can come in, teach them how to do actually a really high quality job, slap their brand on there, and then that extractor license is actually selling product. So I think you're going to see a lot of that synergy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. And you got to crush it with your supply chain as well. So taking a look at the glossary of vape, vaping with vape pens, you have wax, a pliable form, live resin that involves storing and extracting frozen cannabis, and then shatter, which is not my favorite because it shatters everywhere and I'm frugal. So there you go. But total sales, $1.26 billion in total category sales concentrates. And this is just Arizona, California, Oregon, and Colorado from January to September of 2018. So this is before even the huge ramp up. I'm sure these numbers have doubled more than that.
At least. I mean, like, you need supply to be able to really do concentrates. And so Illinois doesn't have a very good supply. Michigan, I'm sure concentrates are probably really taking off because their supply is coming up to where it is more on the West Coast. But as Illinois hopefully gets some licenses out there and more product in the I guess I could say streets, they could then hopefully get more of these types of products on there. Because like right now, if I want to go buy a gram of shatter or wax or whatever, it's going to be north of $60. It might be between $60 and $80 for a gram. That's almost cost prohibitive. I mean, how many real good rips out of a dab do you get for a gram?
Well, some people just do one gram dabs, but that's
I've heard that. You want me to spend $80 on a rip? I don't know about that, man.
When California first came out in 2017, their dabs were $60 to $80 a gram too. So same thing with every other new rollout. It's price gouging, but that's going to come down as soon as competition gets out there. But yeah, that's tough for you, man, to have to put up with those prices. No thanks. I'm good on that. Well, let's switch. So let's recap this. Concentrates. Is it good for a company no matter where you're at? I'm in Washington. You're in Illinois. Would you advise any emerging state like Arizona or New Jersey to carry concentrates?
Absolutely. I mean, you're going to have a trim ratio. So you pull down that weight and 30 to 50% of it needs to go into an extractor. Or if you messed up a crop and maybe 100%, or maybe you're like specifically growing for an extractor. So I really don't understand how you don't have the extraction and the processing license in play, simply because then what are you going to do with all that waste product? You don't want your pre-rolls to have like trim and
I like that risk mitigation. I would also throw out there that if you're looking, at New Jersey or Arizona, I would also look at non-solvents. So rosin, like get a rosin press, because Oregon got shut down in 2015 when the butane, all the apartments in Florida or hotels and motels in Florida were exploding. They shut down all solvents. And so I would always have a solvent-free option, but I would agree with you, Tom, definitely want to include concentrates no matter where you're at.
Yeah, definitely in your business plan. Like you have to, if you're a cultivator, you have to speak to what the heck you're going to do with your trim.
Right. Yeah. Good point. So moving on to edibles, obviously we saw edibles taking over the market earlier in the year with the pandemic. A lot of people staying at home, and so they're able to take advantage of edibles instead of topicals or tinctures or whatever else. So in 2018, we saw in Colorado, Oregon, California, and Arizona hit 651.5 million for the first time. So putting edibles on track to be close to $1 billion. Candy is edibles market leader between California, Colorado, Oregon, and Arizona. Candy sales for the first 3 quarters of 2019 got 44% of the edibles market compared to 17% for tinctures and 15% for chocolates. So the big edible story for several years was gummy sales, and they remain the potent force, capturing 33% of all edible sales during the first 3 quarters of 2018. But tinctures are fast growing at 17% of edible sales during that time period. Just 2 years ago, market shares for tinctures were in single digits. So edibles consumers, average age 38, college degree, 42% have a degree, 69 are employed, half of full-time. Reasons for consumption, 75% want to do it socially, a little over half want to do it medically, and 41% say quality of life.
Yep. Cannabis, when you eat, it's for the health.
Yeah, long-term, right? If you want something that's a high milligram, you can go for an edible. Hopefully they're going to go with more, nano tech in order to get the onset faster, the bioavailability and the effects.
The dissolvability in water as well. Yes, the nanotech business play. So if you were in the edible space, it'd be interesting to invest in one of those nanotechnology manufacturers. So like if you're a processor coming online, you're trying to differentiate yourself, and then that might open the door for you to be able to do, you can put that fast acting, so you could brand it and you can advertise it to stand out from the other gummies, but then you might also be able to do more beverages.
Yeah. Well, beverages are probably a consumer number one, most expensive, difficult market. So unless you have millions of dollars, I wouldn't recommend anybody touch beverage with your friend's money. But some of the advantages of edibles is that you can be a novice. So cannabis novices often turn to edibles, and you can create micro dosing. So like just 5 milligrams, not something that's going to get your heart palpitating and overdosing. But the edible success, it's all about finding niches and exploiting them with fresh, exciting products. But you have to conduct in-depth market analysis and start looking at features that differentiate your product from the competition. Otherwise, you're just going to be sitting on the shelf. You're not going to be going anywhere. And that's an expired good, right? So unlike concentrates that might be on the shelf longer, edibles, those got to sell quick.
Yeah. And so it gets difficult. The recipe is important. And then the constraints against the edibles in your particular market really get in the way. Because like if I'm going to make an edible, I'll create a butter. And then from that, I'll create dosing for like a homemade cookie, because you just cannot make good baked goods in a lot of regulated markets. Like in Illinois, it has to be specifically apportioned, sometimes individually wrapped, child-proof wrappers. So like there's just no weed bakeries out there. It really stinks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you want to study the competition. You want to look at that with intense focus and look at price value proposition to build your product. So if you're thinking about manufacturing like a gluten-free paleo bar that's infused with specific strains like Blue Dream, then you might want to take a look at the data before you make that decision. Because a brand that's winning and celebrating health and fitness might work better if you brand it, because the reality is that the sales just aren't working. You're not going to sell a healthy bar right now. It's too early for the market. So it's much better to be number one in the category like gummies than number 5 in 3 various categories. So you kind of want to focus and pivot to new products only when your original product concept is a home run.
Yeah, we just had 1906. It's an edible company in multi-state operation on the podcast, Cannabis Legalization News. And she was mentioning that they had this new product that they were really excited about out of Colorado, the peanut butter cup. Now that, of course, that's great, right? Because now, like, that's one of the things where when you do have, they can be dosed and sealed and hopefully then childproof. Like chocolate has a longer shelf space or shelf life than, baked goods. But that's really what it's coming down to. That's differentiation. People love peanut butter cups. If it's a delicious tasting product and it gets you a buzz, you're going to have a winner.
Absolutely. 611 million. This is as of September 2018. So edibles include candies and chocolates, tinctures, pills, beverages, and infused foods. But again, like I mentioned before, I would stay away from beverages. It's way too expensive, entirely way too competitive. We've seen Canopy write off 3 billion and Aurora write off 1 billion. And probably a lot of that has to do with beverage manufacturing. But nevertheless, I would definitely recommend including edibles no matter where you're at, because a lot of people will go and buy them, especially on a Friday between the hours of 3 and 5. A third of all edibles sale between that window in Washington State. So
yeah, and if you can get the license, like in Illinois, the craft grower comes with an infuser license. And so you have the license to create the edibles, and then you have the trim. So then you can really invest in whatever type of extraction technology, like a CO2, and then you can distill it out, and then you can make your vapes, and you can make your, well, I'm not sure how good you're going to make your extracts. Give it a shot. But then, you can also put a lot of those grams into your edibles, and it helps move the product. I mean, and then of course, the flower always has to come down. And so like those edibles, provided that you haven't infused the distillate yet into the gummy itself, the shelf life on distillates, pretty stable.
Mm-hmm. Would you recommend companies launch an edible brand?
I would, yeah, especially if it has like a good message and a good product. I mean, so you can keep your, it depends. How can you get and how can you price your raw material? If you can find a source of raw material that you can price well, then yes. But if you can't, and then you're at the mercy of somebody who has the extract, then you might have to get more creative and try to engage in some type of licensing agreement to be the science behind that part of the lab that's the kitchen,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I anticipate that the edibles market is going to mature and that there's going to be just everything out there as normal. It's going to take some of the commodity pricing to come down, more affordable, but we're already seeing isolate kilo prices at $600.
What?
Yeah, it used to be 18,000 in 2018 for water soluble CBD, for example, and then now you're seeing CBG kind of following that same thing. It's crashing a lot faster than CBD did. Wow. So that's good. Moving on, I guess, to topicals. Not a huge seller in the topicals market, but topicals like salves and creams and massage oils, they lack the psychoactive effect. So the topical consumers represents a narrow slice of cannabis enthusiasts, and the reasons for entering the topicals market should revolve, at least in part, around the interest in the wellness and health, because that's a principal reason behind consumers purchasing those products. And like other broad categories, topical markets is divided into different subcategories like balms and salves, which led with a 45% in topical sales during the first 3 quarters of 2019, followed by creams at 17% market share. Patches came in at 10%, and other niche categories had a much smaller percentage. And one particular roadblock for entering the topicals market is the potential for need for research and development. So it looks like the market is relatively small, 59 million in sales during 2017 for California, Colorado, Oregon, and Arizona, and less than 2% of last year's overall nearly $5 billion market. I guess that was for 2018. And average age, a little bit older as expected, or I would expect that, 42 years old, 40% have a college degree, 2/3 are employed, half are full-time, and reason for consumption, 61% for social, 72% for medical, and 41% for quality of life.
Nice. Now, like the topicals, I think, is more of a play for your CBD, or the cannabinoids they don't absorb in the skin. At least that's what I've read and been reported on. If you tune into next week's cannabis legalization news, we'll have Dr. Russo on, and maybe I'll ask him this: why does CBD seem to absorb more readily into the skin than THC? And of course, there is the distinction in the cannabinoid system, the endocannabinoid system, where the THC kind of fits your CB1 receptors, which are primarily in your brain. So if you're rubbing THC like on your shoulder, you're a long way from your brain's receptors. But your CBD is in your CB2 receptors, and those are more regarding pain. And so like I've heard that CBD is more likely to go through the skin, and then the pain receptors that it would be hitting are your CB2 receptors. So they're more spread all throughout the body. And that's one of the reasons why I'm not sure if the THC adult use industry is going to have these types of applications, but the medical applications. So if you have a medical cannabis brand, Okay. So if you have a medical cannabis brand, then it's more likely to be something that I would want, in my repertoire.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Ethan Russo, that's going to be a really interesting interview. He's a really smart dude. So topicals, it's risky. So your product might get lost on the shelves. You're going to have to do a lot of educating. And I've always said that if you have to educate and then sell, like I'm out, I wouldn't do that. But so you're going to have to translate the benefits and differentiating attributions of your topical products to consumer demands, and educate them and bud tenders and all of that, and seek underserved customers. Again, that's tough.
Yep.
So looking at some of the glossary or whatever, we talked about balms and salves, patches, sprays, and massage oils, all adding up to about 65.1 million at the end of 2018. So I don't know. I'm not sure that I would really recommend that somebody create a topical. A tincture, I think you could easily make a tincture. And that I would, if you have the marketing budget, I would recommend that. But topicals, I'm not sure that I can really recommend it. Even though I use it, I'm not sure I would recommend a company do it unless that's what they were going all in to do. So some of the issues with that, because again, you might be sitting there waiting for sales. And if the sales don't happen, you might have an issue. If your products contain THC, that's also an issue. Hot hemp was an issue for a lot of people that were buying that. And so just all in all, an issue. I think it's less popular for topicals. Tom, how's topicals selling in Illinois? Is it worth? I'm saying not. I wouldn't really recommend people start with topicals.
I wouldn't. If I had a THC license, wouldn't go near topicals. If I had a CBD license, I would absolutely go near topicals. I have two. One was $60, and it's a 1-to-1 THC CBD blend that I got from the dispensary. And the other one has 500 milligrams of CBD. The one that I got from the dispensary, because it's regulated, is capped at 100 milligrams of each. And so you can buy stronger, better CBD infused salves from like a farmer's market from a producer of locally grown hemp. So if you are in the hemp licensed business, do it.
Definitely. Yeah, because then you can hit all of those underserved people, whoever need it. But if you're trying to reach the masses, going to an underserved market is, your margins are really, really small. Your sales are small. So this is about kind of trying to get to as many people as you can. If you're focused, like you said, Tom, absolutely. Otherwise, I think you're going to probably end up not generating the revenue to stay in business long term. This is a play. This is a big play. This is like getting into beverages, in my opinion. You need a lot of money to stay in business long term if you're going to make topicals. All right. So basically, that's about it. In conclusion, your research is essential. Data is key. With concentrates, go big, or the boutique route, or so both concentrates with you go big with boutique or the wholesale market. Either way, most leading brands today began their journey with data-backed decision making and followed it up with quality production and smart marketing. So. Edibles, we talked about the consumer branding bonanza. Topicals are from another planet because they're not THC. What are we missing, Tom?
Let's talk about how the database decisions actually get made. So if you're trying to get into this industry, data very often is hard to come by, especially if you don't have any operational knowledge in it. And then you'd be like, okay, well, I want to do something based on a fairly smart play. Who are some data providers that you would go to then crunch the numbers and create a brand or a product? There's BDSA. I think we're going over there. Isn't this one of their publications right now?
It is, yeah.
And then after BDSA, I think that was a merger actually of two different publications. So after that, there's another company out of Chicago, that the Brightfield Group. I think what they do is they scrape all the websites for like the 6,000 cannabis brands that are out there, especially the ones that are, because a lot of dispensaries put their menus, and then those are dynamic. So the menus are always going off, and then they'll just kind of track that to see what data is moving. Now they're going to try to sell you that for a pretty penny. It'll be a lot of pennies. But
Yeah, a headset's going to charge you 18,000 a month if you want to track all of California's data. I don't know if you need to, but $18,000 a month is a pretty penny for just, you know, an individual business. But
right.
then again, California is equivalent to the world's top or fifth revenue generator in terms of GDP.
Well,
Gross domestic product. So huge state, but it's nonetheless it's expensive to get all of that data.
so that's one of the things that actually happens. And so like if you're going to try to make that type of smart money bet, that's fine. You're going to have to be spending a little bit more money on the front end to get that data, to be able to have that back end smart money bet. What I would recommend you do then is after you have gotten that data and raised those money for that, you put that like in your pitch deck or your offering statement. And that's one of the things that's a distinguishing feature from you from all your other competitors. It's like, no, we actually bought this data, sign here, here, and here, and all the NDAs. We'll hint at it, but we're not going to tell you about it until after you've invested, you know?
Right. Yeah. And if you're doing something that's expensive, like creating soda, I would absolutely recommend that you look at granular data, because you want to look to see based on zip code what flavors people are buying. You know, you want to have a certain flavor for hipsters or a certain flavor for other communities. You want to really make sure that your inventory profile is set and optimized, and you're able to not carry too many products. You know, if 80% of your business is one flavor, then why are you making 29 other flavors just for that 20% of sales? Those are the types of things that data can kind of really help you to figure out and streamline.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
Perfect. Well, some other products I would probably recommend looking at are pre-rolls. I know we didn't really get into flower too much, but pre-rolls sell a lot. We didn't get into vape carts too much, but I think those two products sell a lot, as well as like anything that has, you know, chocolate in it for the edibles market. Probably the top three products that I see on the West Coast from Canada down to California.
Well, we did hint on the chocolate issue, but then this really wasn't about the vape or the flower. And if you look at like market data of like, you know, how much of that dollar that's spent on marijuana goes to, cannabis, that goes to either a vape cartridge or flower, it's the vast majority. It's like 75% or so.
Mm-hmm. What would you like to see that's not already out there? I would like to see grab and go coffee, because K-Cup is not coffee. I'd like to see ready to go coffee. It could be black, it could be a mocha or whatever. I would like to see infused coffee at 10 to 15 cents per milligram. So that's comparable to a Starbucks. I want it under $10 for 100 milligrams. And I'm going to have to probably wait a couple more years for that. But what are you waiting for?
I'm waiting for us to regulate the plant so I can be like, oh, you want to go get a coffee and a muffin? Let's go down to Jane's Muffin and Coffees, and like there's a certain type of license, and so like they check our ID, but they can mix you up a drink. You can go to a brewery and get a drink, and so if they were able to grow their own and then infuse their own like on site, so like you're roasting the coffee, contemplating the cultivar that you're going to use, and you're making the muffins and all that with a type of butter that you've specifically grown for that, and then those types of things where you can actually have the fresh baked, and then that coffee that you take, they may have to change public consumption laws, but we'll see. And so like you'd be able to have a fresh roasted infused coffee, and the regulations aren't ridiculous. They aren't requiring you to have like pre-packaged, child-proof, all that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's 2030 me. So by the time 2030 rolls around, I hope I can get that. Yeah. Reasonable goals. Yeah.
Yeah, well, me and Miggy are still waiting for being able to grow at home.
I got my medical card, and so like I'm assuming that if you got your medical card, you are able to grow at home though in Washington State, right?
6, yeah.
Yeah, we were only allowed 5, and that's really stupid. So like it's 5 over 5 inches, which is grotesquely stupid. And so like I'm trying to get them to amend the law so that it's 5 mature plants, so that, because like you could be growing plants and you don't even know if it's male or female, and so then if it gets over 5 inches, you're like, okay, I guess we're playing, we're rolling the dice here. Let's start flowering them. Now you're down to like 3, or 2. God forbid all 5 of them would be male, and you have to start all over. And so that's why I think it's more appropriate to say 5 mature plants that would be then defined as in flowering, because then you'd be like, oh shoot, it's a male, kill it. Or you actually have a female, and then you could also have a mother, and then you could also have and from that mother then you could be taking clones and vegging them and then flowering them. But that's a sensible thing. That's going to take years of evolution.
Yeah. We're gonna go with trying to amend the law so anyone 21 and over can legally grow. Yeah. Cool. All right. Before we wrap this up, man, anything I left out on this BDS analytics report on what products a cannabis business should produce or create?
Oh, no, I don't think so. But I would just recommend that, when you do go into your plans for how you're going to execute these strategies, don't forget to draw up your budgets and take these things into account so that you can understand and value your business, because investors are going to want to see that. They aren't going to want to say, well, we're going to make gummies.
Should they create a business plan and pitch deck for something like this?
It could be part of a more vertically integrated. It could you'd have a slide then that would say because if you're vertically integrated, the question of what do you do with your trim comes up. It just does. And so what about not just your trim, but then, powdery mildew, something. So the THC that's in it is fine, but you're not going to frickin' sell it, and so it's could also be a remediation factor. And so and then that could say throwing that entire crop in the garbage versus throwing it into the extractor might be worth tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. And all those things should go in there. And so, if you're going to have a pitch deck for it or part of your business plan, it could be part of a larger business plan, because each one of these might be a license type. So doing that might be 3 different license types, or 1 in the case of Illinois Craft Grow. But you should definitely address it and put it into your type of pro forma so you could really understand what the enterprise value of your company should be.
Yeah, to your point, you don't really necessarily know if you're going to get powdery mildew or what the issue is, but having the ability to extract and create a concentrate from something that you wouldn't be able to sell flower saves you potentially hundreds of thousands or even millions. Not only that, though, we've seen a lot of fires. And so in 2018 was the first case we saw with the fires in Eastern Oregon, blowing mold spores through filters and causing a lot of that flower to come up positive with bacteria and mold from testing. And so you don't really know what's going to happen. There's a lot more fires now than there ever have been. And so I think maybe if fire season is a new thing, that's risk management or mitigation, to have an extraction where if you can't sell the flower, then you can maybe turn it into a product that you can sell and use.
Yeah, and I don't think fire season's not going to be a thing. Even going back to the Grateful Dead, they were talking about fire in the mountain in the 70s. But now it appears that it's just gotten worse because of global warming. So those fires are probably going to still be there. And that really sucks because of the wonderful climate that they have for outdoor cultivation in that area.
Yeah. So who knows? We might be seeing some, according to our crystal ball predictions, we were going to see some international expansion and some investment surges, a lot of legalization. That's our number one thing. Last year was number 2. So legalization is going to be a big thing. Not so much price and profit. That's been pushed from number 1 last year to, I think, number 8, near the bottom. So a lot of changes, but I think really nobody really knows what's going to happen. So you want to try to add as many things as you can, right? So add concentrates, add edibles, all of these things, get your pitch deck together, let your investors know that you've done your homework, so that you can kind of have as many products out there and diversify as much as possible.
Absolutely. Maximize the license that you have. If you have the license to do it, and then budget for it. And then of course it's, it's kind of like at McDonald's. Remember, when they were creating McDonald's, they were like, these 4 menu items are 85% of our profit. Find those 4 items and then hit it.
That's it. All right, let's wrap this up right there. I want to thank my guest, Tom Howard. He's an attorney out in Illinois, as well as host of Cannabis Legalization News. Tom, you got any links or shout outs?
Yeah, we are moving. Our flagship site is my law blog, cannabisindustrylawyer.com. That should be live on Amazon Web Services, hopefully by next week. And so it should be a lot quicker. And then Cannabis Legalization News is getting a refresh. And so like we actually take some of Josh's most popular videos from the week, and then we do an article on that. We throw that onto cannabislegalizationnews.com. So go over there and subscribe to our newsletter.
Yes. All right. I want to thank Tom Howard. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is The Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't. And I'm out.